Okay, everyone, we're going to be starting soon, so if you're waiting, we're going to be starting shortly. I have to wait for YouTube. We're going live on all media. Today's talk is going to be on BioMediaWarfare, and we're waiting to see if everyone's live here. And it looks like we should be going live shortly. Let's see, I have to edit here. On Twitter looks good, I'm hearing. I have to go public on YouTube. All right. Let's see how that goes. So I'm going live on all media here. Let's see how this is going to do. All right. I should be live on all media. It looks like I'm streaming on YouTube. Let's see if I'm going live on YouTube. YouTube may have some issues, but it looks like otherwise we're pretty good. We should be coming live on other media. Alan, can you see us okay? Okay, YouTube says some time because there could be some issues out there, but I think on Twitter we're okay. Alan, are we good on Facebook? You can text me, Alan. If you guys see me on Facebook, not on Facebook. Okay. Let's see if Facebook... All right, let's see how Facebook is doing. And I'm just redoing Facebook. I think on Periscope I'm good. Looks like. Let's see how we're doing on Periscope. View the broadcast. Okay, it looks like we're good on Periscope. And looks like we're going live on Facebook here. Yep, there we are. Good. Okay, everyone. Good morning. This is Dr.SHIVA Ayyadurai. We're going to be really talking about some very important things today. And in particular, we're going to talk about a concept that I've had for a number of years, going back to probably about almost a decade now. It's a concept of biology and media coming together in some very fundamental ways. And it's a theory that I actually proposed many years ago at a conference that I gave this paper at in Cornell, and it's called the Biomimetics of Communication and Media. So I want to explain this to you a little bit, the theory. I am a scientist, I am a systems biologist. I also do work in a number of other areas, some of you may know. But this concept came to me because some of you may know I created the first email system. That was my first foray into email, and many years later, about 10, 15 years later, I also created a technology called EchoMail. And EchoMail was a technology which allowed to analyze email and automatically sort it, and that technology was used by the largest customer service organizations in the world. So email back in 78 was where I created the future in many ways to convert the old-fashioned interoffice mail system to the electronic form, wrote the 50,000 lines of code, called it email, and got the first US copyright. There's no controversy on who created email. It was just a controversy created when it went into the Smithsonian about 7 years ago. But the reality was email was really a medium for interoffice communications, organizational communications. Now in 1993, almost 15 years later, I'd gone to MIT, did a bunch of degrees, and I was in the middle of my PhD program, and I was figuring out ways, what you would call today AI, in those days we called it pattern analysis and AI, to automatically read a signal. The signal could be a handwriting and automatically figure out what was in the handwriting and categorize it, or a speech signal, or an ultrasonic signal, or a document. So I was creating a very powerful technology base that could handle all different kinds of signal using foundational areas in information theory. And I call that concept information cybernetics, and that was the middle of my PhD work in 1993. Now in the middle of that, I got involved in a contest I was asked to participate in to automatically analyze email, because email is another type of signal. Long story short, I ended up winning that competition. It was done for the White House. In 1993, up until 78 to 93, email was really an interoffice application. But after 93, email became a consumer application. Why? Well, if I don't know how old some of you are, but if you are over the age of 40, you may remember in 1993 is when the World Wide Web came, and it was really the user interface over the internet, and it allowed everyday people to start using the internet. The email that I had created in 78 went to a web platform, so companies like Yahoo and Gmail and all these companies, AOL started creating a web-based version of email. And that's when you saw email volume skyrocketing. In 1993, when I used to give seminars in a room of about 1,000 people, you may be lucky if you saw about one person, two people out of a 1,000 say they had an email account. But after 93, when the web came, email became a consumer application. But what also happened was lots of people started getting inbound email. So 1993, when Clinton was in the White House, he was experiencing 5,000 emails per day coming in, and they were doubling. The way that the White House used to handle communications was if you wrote them a letter, you said, I have an issue with some issue with education or drugs, they would print out that letter. They had 147 different categories of different buckets of categories, and for the letter that you wrote in, they would find the right form letter and they would send it out to you. Well, when email came, they weren't prepared for this. It was much higher volume. So the way that the White House was dealing with was they would actually print out the email and they would find the right bucket and they would send you back a print letter to your email only if you put your home address on that email. So in 1993, the White House decides to run a contest to see, are there artificial intelligence technologies that can automatically read an email, categorize it into one of those 147 categories, to actually understand the categorization of that email. Long story short, I was the only graduate student invited to participate because of my work in the field that was starting to be known, with 5 other publicly traded companies. Long story short, I ended up winning that contest, and I left MIT to start a company called EchoMail. You can look it up; it still is up there, ECHOMAIL. So we used to take an email, figure out the sentiment in the email, the attitude in the email, all these amazing features. Then we could actually bucket it and then figure out a response. So I grew that company to around $250 million in value, and it was a great company and for large enterprises. Today we're starting to offer that same technology for small businesses and small companies, and you can go read about it. But anyway, when I was doing that company, I used to get to work with the largest organizations in the world, American Express and Citigroup and Nike. These were all customers of mine. And I really started seeing how organizations were using media, particularly with digital media, in very, very different ways. And I'll come back to that. But fundamentally, media, social media, email was changing the nature of organizations from what was called centralized command and control to becoming more dispersive, because the old model of organizational theory was you had the CEO's office and they would tell their senior managers what to do, and then it would be a concentric circle model, so it was a very hierarchical model. But what email and other types of media were starting to do was that decisions and the actual wonderful decisions were being made at the periphery. So at the call centers, people would write into an organization, and the call center people would respond back. At PR, which was centralized, was also becoming much more dispersed. Things like social media, wall posts, and all these things are starting to change the central command and control architecture. In our case, our technology would automatically read the email. We would figure out what it was. We would route it to people. People would formulate answers, so they had standard messages. But it was a very powerful way that EchoMail helped major organizations, and it still does. It was way ahead of its time. It's probably 15 years ahead of its time at the time. Separately from this, some of you may know in 2003 I came back to MIT because one of my other loves is medicine, and I ended up creating a technology called CytoSolve, which is a technology to model molecular pathways on the computer. So what that allowed us to do was to look at the human cell as a very complex infrastructure of all different chemical reactions, and figure out the chemical interactions, mathematically convert them to pathways, and compute them. So that was CytoSolve. So if email in many ways was the infrastructure that I created in 78 to modulate communications in the inner office, CytoSolve was a way to modulate and understand molecular interactions. So they seem very different, but to me, I started seeing these very, very interesting features that were very similar. So so that resulted in an aha moment I had in 2000 and around, when was this paper published? Let's see. This was published in 2011, and it was called The Biomimetics of Communication and Media. And what I was proposing in this paper was that we were actually that there was a phenomenon taking place where media and communication and biology, media, communication, biology, were actually starting to mimic each other. And let me share with you you can read the paper if you guys want it. You can go get it on my center's website. But if you look at the cell, one of the things that was occurring in biology at this time, in 2003, one of the important things that was occurring was we realized that the old model of biology had significantly changed. In 1950s, when Watson and Crick, discovered DNA, the theory was that DNA, so when you saw diagrams of the cell, they would draw the cell wall, the cytoplasm, and right in the middle was the nucleus, and the DNA was in there, and the theory was that the DNA was a command and control center, right? And again, everything went from there. So we were in some ways imposing this human concept of command and control that at the cellular level, that the DNA was a center, and it sent communications out everywhere else, okay? So it's a central command and control model, and the DNA was considered the brain of the cell. However, in 2003, something fascinating occurred. When the Genome Project ended around 2003, one of the big parts of it where we were trying to understand how many genes did we have and how many did a worm have. We knew a worm had around 20,000 genes. We thought we had about 500,000 genes. When the Genome Project ended, it turns out we only have around 20,000 protein coding genes, the same as a worm. So this shifted biology it was a revolution in biology. People realized they'd gotten things wrong. Biologists had asserted that complexity of an organism was related to the number of parts. So the more number of genes, which means you must be more complex. A worm had 20,000 genes. So we said, well, we must have 500,000 genes because we're more complex. Well, it turns out we have about the same number of genes, around 20,000 genes. So now the issue was, well, if that's not true, that means DNA is not who we are. Genes are not who we are. There's more complexity. So what this resulted in people realizing it's all the molecular interactions going on. So what I had proposed in this diagram here, you'll see, was that if you look at, this is essentially me saying, if you look at if you guys can see this here, if you look at the cell, the red represents the cell wall, and then inside of it, in this orange area, you have all the stuff going on inside of the cell wall, and over here was the nucleus where RNA and transcription is taking place. Now, what I had proposed here, if you notice, the nucleus is not in the center. I pushed it off to the side, almost made it sort of equal. And what you find here, as you study biology more and more, all the interesting stuff is really occurring at the edges, meaning the interactions of things being, a virus lands on the cell wall, interactions take place right here, whether it's allowed in or not. All the communication decisions, this is like the border, the immigration border in some ways, where decisions are being made, what's allowed and what isn't. And when things are allowed in, then reactions take place in the cytoplasm. The nucleus in this model really has information. It's really storage, okay? It really has storage of DNA, which is used as needed to help create proteins as needed. So it's not like the DNA is guiding everything. It's more as things come in from the outside in, the DNA is issued commands to react, to upregulate different proteins, etc. So the concept here, the takeaway is that the edges and the interior and the communication at the edges is where the really fascinating things are going on. So this was biology was starting to move in this direction. I essentially, articulated that, saying that the real, very cool stuff is occurring at the edges. Okay, and this has a lot of philosophical meaning. Similarly, at this time, let me go back to the diagram. I was remember, I was in transition. I was running EchoMail, my company, from 1993 to 2003, worked with the biggest Fortune 1000 companies, learned a lot about how organizations worked. And here in 2003 to 7, I was starting to move into systems biology. And one of the interesting things I noted here, you'll see in this diagram here, let's go down here in this paper. It was a very, very well received paper. I sort of drew an organization like a cell here, as you can see. And what you see here is that the cell wall is in this case is mimicking the wall of an organization, which is interacting with the public outside. And so the public, you're talking with social media, to Twitter and Facebook, to who? Your consumers or your partners. Investor relations is sending news out to its potential investors. The executive office is sending news out. Public relations, customer service, which are typically in warehouses, getting lots of phone calls. But the edges are where the interesting thing is occurring. This is where you're connecting with customers and partners, messages are going out. And here you notice the old model of senior management was very much like the nucleus, like they were the center and everything was going on outside. In many ways, the concept of the government being at the center and all of us listening to them. But here you notice I've offset it a little bit. This is the corporate office. Salespeople are bringing in sales. But it's a very interesting analogy I was making here. But the important point is the interesting things here occurring at the edges. Very similar. Someone said, would you mind elaborating on the philosophical aspect? I will. And that, so the interesting thing is interactions at the edges are what define the organizational reactions which occur here, how much sales you get, how HR works, versus what you see occur, and similar to what you see occurring here at the cell wall. Today, for example, we know in biology that when things land on the cell surface, there's all these wonderful reactions that take place that actually initiate the cell instructions to the DNA to do stuff. In some ways, DNA is waiting there. So if you eat a certain food, if you get a virus, if you get different things, these interactions occur at the cell wall. No different than if a company, let's say, has a crisis taking place. Those occur at the edges, and then the senior management has to decide what role it takes in that. But all the interesting stuff was taking place at the edges. In fact, to answer the philosophical question, if you look at information, matter, and energy, there's a very interesting body of physics which is saying that the edges of the universe is where information and thought is stored, and that's materialized through energy, and then we get matter. So information, energy, and matter. So thoughts through energy create matter. In this case, the information, the interesting activities going on at the edges, and the real in some ways, the center, what we thought as a center, is not so smart. So in my book, System and Revolution, I talk about this concept of the center. We, I believe, take this anthropomorphic view, thinking that there is a center to everything. So, we thought that, the Earth was the center of the universe. Well, it turned out that's not true. Well, it turns out the solar system is not the center of the universe either. The solar system literally goes around the Milky Way, but there's really no center. I think this concept of center is unfortunately a hierarchical man-made concept, that in nature there is really no center, there's really the edges. So I think this comes philosophically important, because where does creativity take place? I would argue it occurs at the edges, not in the center. So we are thought to believe that all the great innovations come out of MIT, Harvard, Silicon Valley, the center. Email was not created in the center of the military-industrial complex. It was created in Newark, New Jersey. TV was not created by RCA in the center of Stanford. It was created by a young kid called Philo Farnsworth, and so on. So the edges are where it's interesting. So what I'm proposing here is that it's not about the center, it's about the edges, okay? And in nature, I think it's I think some of the biblical teachings say the meek shall inherit the earth. So the concept is that all of us who are quote unquote at the edges is where all the intelligence occurs, and we've been thought to think all the intelligence in the center, be it in this case in the DNA, or be it in the case of the organizational center. Okay, so I want to give you that theoretical framework that I'm proposing here. Because it comes down to a concept that I want to share with you called BioMediaWarfare. And I started proposing this. So a term that I've come up with to really explain what I believe is going on in the world right now as media, propaganda, and biological engineering emerge. The interesting thing is I have a PhD in biological engineering. I also have a master's in media, which I don't talk about, out of the MIT Media Lab, and with all the work I've done with EchoMail. So I understand media very well, the dynamics of it. I also understand the dynamics of biological systems, the molecular systems as well as the media systems. When you put this together, here's a theory I have that came as I started looking at the coronavirus. And this is what I want to propose to you, and then we can take some questions also. The proposal is this. Why do you think that there's been, if you turn the clock back about a month ago, mid-December to January, there was a huge movement taking place, and still is, but I called for having massive protests in New Jersey to really, to stop a lot of this nonsense about trying to impose vaccines on everyone. This is not about pro or anti-vax. It's about the government trying to tell us that one size fits all of us, and particularly children, should all get the same standardized vaccines. For 17 years, this movement's been going on. When I came into it, I saw a major flaw, that it was a top-down thing, be it the legislative people involved, be it the 1962 Vaccination Act, or be it the Kennedys and a few media people controlling this movement. And I said this needs to be a bottoms-up movement. People in New Jersey took that to heart, and we had a very powerful movement. And one of the things that happened was they stopped the bill from, the bill wasn't passed in New Jersey because they didn't have enough votes. It was a big victory. Well, a week later, the coronavirus comes. Now, also look prior to that in China. I'm just looking at timing, no conspiracy. I'm just looking at the timing. Big victory in New Jersey. But the other thing that also occurred, exactly, no forced vaccine someone just put out. But the other thing that also occurred at this time, you may think about, was this, that Hong Kong protests were going on. People in Hong Kong wanted freedom. It was a bottoms-up, massive, explosive movement. So here the Chinese government and the establishment is dealing with the fact people are waking up that you can't impose medical interventions on everyone. And I was leading that effort in terms of sharing with people the immune system, how the immune system's different, and those videos were going viral. Plus, you had the fact there's this huge upsurge of activism in Hong Kong, okay? And that's all over the media. We hear the media that, the bills about vaccines, and we also see this media event about Hong Kong. So just put that in your framework, and you can go look at it on Google. You'll see a lot of media about the Hong Kong protests and what occurred in New Jersey. Well, 1 week later, we have this, the news media about the coronavirus, okay? And we still have it in the media. Well, what do you see occur as a result of that? Well, the coronavirus news cycle is now used to, again, bring out guys like Bill Gates, who are now going to donate $100 million to the WHO for vaccines. Vaccines now come front and foremost as this is a way that we fight the coronavirus. It's a great vehicle, right, to reinstantiate the power of vaccines. And at the same time, you don't hear a lot about Hong Kong anymore. Hong Kong disappears off the front pages. Now, the Chinese government, you have to understand, is an autocratic central command and control. So in this model, they're in the center and they control everyone around them, okay? So China is the state capitalist model. If you really want to get into if you want to go study, Marxian theory and etc., you'll actually find that Mao was actually a revisionist of Marxism. Okay, he used Marx's picture and everything, but if you actually go read the writings, which very few people have read, of Das Kapital, etc., it was always supposed to be about things coming bottoms up. Well, the Chinese Communist Party was all about top-down and centralized command and control, and that's what they're about. It's autocratic, centralized dictatorship rule. So now think about the fact that Hong Kong is taking place, and you have people coming bottoms up, demanding their freedom, okay? And it's all in the news. People are supporting Hong Kong. By and large, people believe in democracy. Coronavirus, this is what I call biomedia warfare. You have control of the media, and now you need something very, very urgent. Well, viruses, right? Given all the news about pro-vax, anti-vax, viruses are always promoted as this deadly thing that can kill everyone. And again, we have to consider there's trillions of viruses. We have billions of viruses in our body. And because very few people have the chance to really study biology, it's always promoted as, and a movie came out in the middle of this by Netflix called Pandemic, quite coincidental. But the notion of viruses can kill anyone, annihilate the immune system, this is what's promoted in the media. And if you actually study biology, it's pretty much nonsense, because our immune system has evolved over billions of years. If you have the right nutrition and the right environment, your body is intended to fight off these viruses. You're supposed to be a resilient system. You're supposed to, as I shared in this diagram, get things coming to you at your cell walls, right? You're supposed to exercise your cell walls, and your body learns how to react and get stronger and stronger. So this whole notion a virus can kill you, or this one can completely annihilate you, is false, because if you have healthy, it's assuming you have a weak immune system, okay? So if we look at what's going on with the coronavirus, right now, the last number I think I looked at was, let's say, 2% of the people who've been infected have died. 2%, okay? Well, every year, a maximum of 800,000 people get infected by the flu, and about 60,000 die. That's about 8%, okay? In here, we have a 2% death rate, a mortality rate, and most of the people who are actually dying, if you read about it, are people 60 and over who also had a pre-existing condition. However, the coronavirus is everywhere in the news, okay? And for the Chinese government, this is a proposal, a hypothesis, as a scientist I'd like to make. Isn't it quite valuable for the Chinese government to really push this coronavirus? And we can talk about whether it was man-made or not man-made. That's a whole nother discussion, and if you want, I can talk about that. But separate from that, this virus, biology, combined with media, is a very powerful way, biomedia warfare, that you can now scare the bejesus out of the public and say, oh my God, this is what we need to do. This becomes the most important issue. Again, only 2% of the people have died, right? You brand it as a world, a massive, horrible thing. And by the way, the WHO gets involved, and the WHO, which is the part of the UN, is a very corrupt organization if you actually go study them. The people who've been typically put into the leadership of the WHO are supported, by and large, they have links 1 to 2 degrees of freedom away to the Gates Foundation or to the Clinton Global Initiative. It's about control. So I would like to posit this concept that we are living in a very interesting time. It's not just, media warfare, propaganda, but now you're using viruses and the fear of viruses melding into media to create enough fear that you can have top-down control. Because the reality is we're moving to a world where people want to come bottoms up. That's what we saw in Hong Kong. That's what we saw in New Jersey. And people are recognizing the power is at the edges. And so governments and institutions want to deploy top-down control, including people in these so-called activism groups. That's why I was very critical of some of these people who've been fighting the quote-unquote vaccine issue for 17 years. They support, people like Bobby Kennedy support Hillary Clinton. They've been in this movement for a long time. And what have they really done? Very little. But when it's bottoms up, explosive things take place, things get done quickly. So in reaction to that, I would like to propose that those in power are now weaponizing, media weaponizing viruses to scare us, and then using that not potentially as a weapon to kill people. That could be part of it. But the bigger thing is really control. The Chinese government, with the uprising in Hong Kong, really needs to show that they have control of the situation. So you manufacture, maybe they manufactured it, maybe the bioweapon argument's true. There's around 1,500 nucleotides in the coronavirus I've talked about on RT, which is very different than in the SARS virus, and we can't really trace where it came from. In fact, in this case with the coronavirus, the first person who got infected wasn't in the market. So perhaps it was created. If it was created or not, in some ways it doesn't make a difference. In my view, it is serving the Chinese government because they can come in as the saviors of the uniparty. We're going to build quickly. Look how fast we can build these hospitals in 10 days. We can take control of things and we can bring order to disorder. So that's what I'd like to put out there. The concept of biology and media, and again, you've probably heard it first time here, biomedia warfare. Biomedia warfare, where biology and media start getting interconnected. So so someone just said citizens journalism, exactly, is the opposite of top down. We go bottoms up. So if you look at the statistics again, 2% of people have died. Most of the people who are getting this are from pre-existing conditions, even the mortality. I think in one study, out of the set of people that died, a small fraction were people below the age of 60, I think 5 people. So I want to put this in context and perhaps we can have a conversation. Alan, if you're there, if you're watching my Facebook, we can see, let's see what's going on Facebook. If there's any interesting comments coming up there. Let's see, comments on Facebook. Fear and division, someone's saying. All while stating to public, this is why you need us. Exactly. It was no doubt created. Thank you. Fear and division. So if you're on Facebook, you can see it live there. On Twitter, biomedia warfare. Exactly. So let's take any questions. So again, the concept is, have we taken propaganda to a new level where we're using biology combined with media to create fear, wrap it around media and make it news stories so you can control people? That's the concept. Biomedia warfare. Someone says, doesn't seem like you know all the facts. That was from GG Latinos. Well, I'm here to share. Tell me what you know and we can talk more. That's Gigi. Shiva, come to the rescue. Someone says that. Let's look at this one. Alan, if you see any comments, let me know. Alan's one of our producers helping us today. What's in the fog China spraying? Lysol. Someone saying, what about Bill Gates control population growth by 10% using vaccines? Makes sense. What to the doctor died? I'm not sure what that means. Vaccine is a virus. The UN agenda to depopulate the world. Agenda 21. I know a number of people have brought that up. The entire UN is corrupt. The media is global in the discussion of coronavirus. You're spot on. Exactly. So everyone is discussing the coronavirus. We don't discuss other things which are equally deadly or more. And that discussion has gone into the fray. And I really want to find out what has happened to Hong Kong. I mean, Hong Kong was a huge movement of the people, it looked. It's completely gone. So the question I want to posit to you is it possible that, forget the conspiracy stuff that's gone, was it made by China or not? Let's say it was or wasn't. Wasn't this an amazing opportunity for China to put that front and center and to diminish the protests that are taking place in Hong Kong? Stephanie Pruden-Christner says, bottoms up, exactly. This is biomedia warfare, started with polio. Have you read Dr. Mary's Monkey? No, but I will. How do we as citizens get a media modality to communicate real facts? So that's a good question. So one of the things is that I'm going to talk about this next Saturday, what I call digital rights, so really the need to have peer-to-peer communications where we can actually have media that's owned by the people for the people. It's not going to occur. I know there's some people saying, let me go create my own version of Facebook. Well, even if you do that, you may create the software, but the infrastructure of that media is owned by 5 major telecommunications companies. Some of you may remember when the revolution was taking place in Egypt, in Tahrir Square. First the students came out and that grew and grew and grew and they were using Facebook and social media. But when working people came out, that was very fearful to the Mubarak government. And literally one phone call to the telecommunications company Vodafone shut down the entire internet in Egypt. So it didn't matter whether they had Facebook or Twitter, they went right to the hardware and they shut down the telecommunications. So we're not going to have free communications in the digital world as long as Facebook and Google and 4 or 5 telecom companies own the media. Right now, we're not that much of a threat. If there was, let's say, the government became extremely onerous and we wanted to rise up, well, it's good that we have the Second Amendment. But the First Amendment could be completely controlled by probably six people in the world. The CEOs of AT&T, Verizon, maybe one other telecom, and the CEO of Google and Facebook. Few people can essentially shut down communications. The only way out of this is peer-to-peer and mesh networks, which I've proposed to the Postal Service. And it's a solution that frankly a very, when you think about it, it may sound like a weird solution, but it's actually a very common sense solution for us to regain our digital rights. Let me look on Facebook here. Smoke and mirrors, and information to confirm what happened to the measles outbreaks. Exactly. We need to rise up. Yep. So someone just said, what happens to the measles outbreaks? Exactly. Whenever people come, it seems like wanting to assert their own democracy, be it what occurred we saw in Hong Kong, or people in this country saying, hey, it's not about vaccine or not vaccine. We can have that discussion. I've shared with you my scientific perspective on it. I've presented papers on this. I put out the immune system video. Separate from the science of fundamental issues, do we, as people, have right to decide what goes into our bodies? That's what the real question here is. And whenever people have risen up to demand yes, you will notice suddenly measles outbreaks break or coronavirus. So it's a very interesting world we live in now, how viruses are being used to support media, integrated with media. It's almost like viral marketing. In some ways, it's to the power of two. Did you see the interview did with Google whistleblower? I think no, but Zach Voorhees and I have communicated. Let's see this other one, 57 comments. I'm trying to go through all your comments, guys, so I can make sure I don't miss any. Let's go on here and see what's on. The media is global in the discussion of coronavirus. That's from James. Problem, reaction, solution. Definitely. Thanks for addressing issues most political aspirants feel to deal with. Your bravery is appreciated. Are we supposed to survive? So someone just talked about the fact that I am running for United States Senate. The opposition, I'm running as a Republican. The opposition will be either Ed Markey or Joe Kennedy. And, our view is that if you want to support our campaign, you can go to the Future Forward with Shiva. Future Forward with Shiva. That's what our campaign's about. Creating the future moving forward with Dr. Shiva. That's what our campaign is. Or people can remain backward in the old with these old corrupt politicians. The old corrupt political model is it's who you know, it's your name, you're a Kennedy, you automatically get to be the next U.S. Senator, or you're a Markey in Massachusetts. But if you fundamentally look at what's going on in this country, in the world, a small set of people who are highly corrupt, oligarchs, think they're going to control everything in the world, a finite set of people. And that finite set of people have become so corrupt, they can't maintain the infrastructure in this country anymore. And if you go to Shiva for Senate, you'll see it. I have a part of the website. In fact, I'll bring it up here since people are asking about it. If we go to Shiva for Senate, if you're online, let me go to shivaforsenate.com. There's a little manifesto I've written that everyone, if you have the chance to go read it, it's a theoretical manifesto. It's easy to read. It's about 2 pages. It is pretty potent, meaning it has a lot of good content in it, but it really lays out the overall overarching thing that's taking place. So let me go here. And let me switch over here, so transition over here. So if you go to the website, you can literally click here, and you can see right here this manifesto, which is a PDF document that'll give you a detailed analysis of my analysis of what's going on. And it's the revolution to win your future for truth, freedom, and health. And if you go through this PDF, you can download it, you're free to print it. It really talks about the fundamental issue that's occurring is these major centralized systems of governance are unable to deliver us infrastructure. Massachusetts, for example, got a big fat F, 135, I think the score is here, 123 out of 350 in its rating by the American Society of Civil Engineers. It is from infrastructure is how we really solve problems. It is infrastructure that really eliminated most of the infectious diseases in the 1900s. It is not medical interventions. They've had a minimal effect. But because the governments of the world have become, frankly, because of the level of corruption, particularly in the United States and these states, they're unable to deliver us infrastructure. That is how we actually solve problems. And that's the way we move into the future, through infrastructure, through innovations, of integrating different ideas. Because they can't do that, in my view, they are creating fake problems and fake solutions. And they're weaponizing that through the media. And that's what this biomedia warfare aspect is about. Let's see. Any other questions here? Everyone asks a lot about, someone said you should listen to Steve Bannon's War Room Pandemic. He just had Chinese guy there with the scoop. Why are there so many Bio4 level labs? Coronavirus wouldn't be possible without Bio4s. Who decides the airwaves? So let's talk about this. Look, the notion of weaponizing biology has been around for a while, which means creating biological warfare. As we know, the House is now discussing, the Lyme disease that potentially, things like ticks and mosquitoes were used to deliver certain types of viruses. It's quite possible. When you have a lot of power with a few set of people can do a lot of nasty things. And China, what's interesting about them is because of the closed nature, they're doing all sorts of experiments right now. Transplanting transplanting, I think, brains from one animal to another animal. The controls that we think will take place on bioethics to stop some of this research, in my view, it's probably gotten out of hand. And there's probably all sorts of experimentation that's taking place in China. And for that matter, we don't know in the U.S. deep state what's taking place. But when you bring in biology into this, it becomes a very powerful way to weaponize systems, but also to control people. How about Candida auris in most hospitals? So the Candida auris virus, or the bacteria people have talked about, it's something deep in the soil. I think New York Times had an article on it that's coming out, and no one's talking that much about it. But this is what I can tell you when it comes to the immune system. The solution here is really clean water, clean air, clean food, and making sure you're getting enough nutrients. If we keep getting fearful that these viruses are going to, destroy us and control us and hurt us, that is part of the game here. There are many things that we can do to support our immune system, and that's what we should really be putting forward. If you don't have proper water, if there's poison in water, you start hurting your gut microbiome. That microbiome destruction causes neuroinflammation. By the way, quote unquote, autism is a spectrum of neuroinflammation. And all of these systems are interconnected, the gut-brain axis. So what we should really be focused on from a policy perspective, from a health rights perspective, is clean air, clean water, clean food. Instead of focusing on that, you have dumb idiots like AOC and Markey, the guy I'm going to run after, who's been involved in the environmental quote unquote movement for 40 years. Meanwhile, companies like Monsanto are allowed to still prosper. They merge in with Bayer. We have huge amounts of pesticides that are still in our environment, which affect the gut microbiome. Instead of addressing clean water, clean air, clean food, clean air, for example, pollution is the number one source of death in the world. 7 million people die. Instead of addressing that issue, which is an infrastructure issue, which means the politicians have to address that, and they can't because they're corrupt. Most of their money goes into their pockets. They create an issue called climate change. They make CO2 the enemy. So with CO2 as the enemy, and then you, again, use media warfare. In some ways, it's chemical media warfare. You say CO2 is the enemy. It's frankly biology again. And then you scare the hell out of people. Use a girl like Greta, I forget her, like Thornburg, whatever her name is, to scare everyone, fear again, and therefore that fear is used to promote policy. When the real issue is we need to lower pollution. The Paris Accords allows China to pollute another 22 billion tons of carbon. Another 11 billion. They're able to go from 11 billion carbon tons today, China, and to double their pollution. So the Paris Accords doesn't lower pollution. It increases pollution. And then after 2030, countries like China will have to get more carbon credits to offset their pollution. So this is really all a big scam when we're not addressing the fundamental issues of actually clean water, clean air, clean food. We are smarter than they realize, only their brainwashed few believe them. That's true. We need brilliant politicians in D.C. Shiva for Senate. Look, I am running for Senate. When I look at this country, my entire life has been about creating the future. By the way, we're in the middle of launching my updated website because a lot of people really don't know that I actually work full-time for a living. I get up at 4 or 5 in the morning and I run 3 different businesses. I'm still an inventor and a scientist. It's something I really enjoy doing. And I've been doing it all my life. So people said, Shiva, people really need to understand all the different range of things you do. So we've updated our website to really make that clear. So if you go to our new website, you'll see it. It's called, it's Creating the Future. You'll see it gives a little portfolio of the different things I've done. In 78, I created the first email system. Today in 2020, as people may know, I'm running for U.S. Senate. Let me go here. And this is one of the activities I'm doing right now. But, I also run a company called Cytosolve. Cytosolve is a company's digital medicine. We've figured out a very powerful way to model molecular pathways on the computer. This was my PhD work at MIT between 2003 to 7 to 12. I wrote a lot of papers, but one of my loves is really natural products, how the alchemy of natural ingredients. And we're using this technology to really do digital medicine so we can actually understand at the molecular level how, let me go back here, how, interactions take place within the human body, so people can actually, we can actually develop medicines or natural products at work. If you go to Whole Foods today, there's a lot of stuff there that people are putting, but some of it's snake oil. Our technology can actually figure it out. The other thing I do is Systems Health. It is my educational institute that I run, where we actually teach people how to see the body as a system. And as I shared, I'll talk about this, but we have a tool that those people who support my campaign, I give them a book called System and Revolution. I give them the tools to actually understand your body as a system, and I'll share that with you shortly. EchoMail is a very powerful company which allows you to analyze email. And the other thing is, some of you may or may not know that I'm the guy who created Clean Food Certified. You can go to Whole Foods now and you'll see many, many products that have been certified clean, which goes beyond GMOs, which goes beyond, it's non-GMO and it's organic, but it goes beyond that. So when you have a time, please take a chance to understand sort of the range of things that I'm involved in. And I think from a U.S. Senate candidate, you're not going to see someone who actually still writes software code, runs companies, created the first email system, is actually helping health. The Clean Food Certified, one of the things I'm very proud of with the Clean Food Certified piece is if you go to Whole Foods or other companies, let me bring this up. It's something interesting to know. I could do a whole video on it. Maybe I'll do it next week. But Clean Food Certified is a standard that I did as a labor of love, because what was going on was it's a consensus-based standard without waiting for the government. We brought together consumers and stakeholders, and we built a label called Clean and Raw, and it's really taking the clean food movement to another level. And what we've done here is we've literally said, okay, in order to have clean food, you have to take a systems-based approach, which involves safety, minimally processed, and bioavailability of nutrients. 3 things: the food has to be safe, minimally processed, you don't want to kill the food, at high bioavailability. And we have 2 different seals, and there's many products, the more the advanced, smart, innovative people in the health products industry, they're recognizing we need to go to clean food. So I wanted to share that with everyone to let you know that as a Senate candidate, I still work full-time. And my theory of this was that the founders of this country, Washington was a surveyor, he was a businessman, he was a soldier. People like Jefferson were architects, scientists. Franklin, he did pretty much everything. And we think that one person should only do one thing. So it's hard for people to understand that I'm a polymath. I do actually do all these things. I'm not a Joe Kennedy who, like a robot, went to a private school, then went to law school, and now gets to run for Senate. And that's what these guys do. And I think we deserve more. So the Shiva for Senate campaign in Massachusetts, in many ways, it's bringing us back to what this country was about. People in this country are about creating the future. That's what America was supposed to be about. It's about all of us. We're supposed to use our intelligence and create the future, and bottoms up, by the people, for the people. That's why when I have a perspective on these things, because I do a lot of different things, and I'm actually there building things like, be it a plumber or an electrician, people or engineers who do stuff, we see things that politicians who are just sort of getting there to elected, reelected don't see. Let me take a couple other questions. Move the F out of Massachusetts. Well, look, Massachusetts is in many ways a center of the deep state. You have the 2 major institutions, of academic institutions, MIT, supposedly the biggest institution for science and technology in Harvard. I would argue pretty much every major villain in the world has gone through one of those two institutes. So winning in Massachusetts, defeating the oligarchy of the quote-unquote liberal aristocracy by someone like me, who's really one of you, who came from nothing, working class kid in New Jersey, would be a powerful, explosive moment in history. So any of you out there, support our campaign. And what I wanted to let you guys know is, just to let you know, it's very hard for me to accept something for nothing. Probably how my parents brought me up. But let me show you what we do is when you guys support our campaign, I actually give you something. It's my great-grandfather said one of the most powerful things is knowledge. And so here, what we've done is if you go to our campaign and you want to donate to our campaign, it's not a simple give me money, give me money, give me money. Our campaign is about recognizing that I want to give you something. So you will get this System and Revolution book. You also get access to this very cool tool that I've created, which teaches you the principles of systems, how your body itself is a system. And obviously, you also get a bumper sticker. But if you go to this very cool site called Your Body, Your System, this is out of my life's work to actually teach you how the body is a system and how you are a unique being. You see, modern biology tells us that biological systems are very complex. Your body is different than my body. And this is why the notion of medical interventions, one size fits all, is so medieval. And here what I want to share with you is that with this tool, and anyone who gives 25 or more gets this. We used to sell this for a lot more, but it's a way of me supporting what you want to do. But you answer a set of questions and it figures out your body type. And this is using engineering principles, transport, conversion, and storage. So this would be where your body likes to be. Another set of questions reveals how your body is off course, very much like an airplane. And then what you can do to build, it's an educational tool, to how you can use foods and supplements and exercise to bring your body back to you. And if you want to read the theory of it, there's a very nice paper I wrote in this journal called The Systems of Systems Engineering. So the point is that I want to teach you how to look at the world in a different way, how your body is a system, how there's interconnections. And that's why I'm able to take something like BioMediaWarfare and take biology and media, put it together, because I see these things in a very different way. They want to weaken us, so they say strong. Bannon, no saint deception. Population control. Kombucha. Yeah, so one of the things, someone just said kombucha. In traditional systems, people always ate stuff that were in high enzymatic content that supported your microbiome. Your microbiome is all over your body, but it's your bacterial jungle in your body. For every one cell you have, there's at least 10 to 100 other bacteria or viruses in your body. These are not enemies in many ways. They're basically part of who we are. And they interact with us, and we're only starting to learn how the gut microbiome influences the brain. So that's why when we start taking certain medical interventions without fully understanding their ramifications, we could be perturbing our own microbiome. So for example, when I grew up in India in a small village, I remember my great-grandfather, before he went to work in the fields, he would drink the previous night's, it was almost like rice wine. It was basically fermented rice, and he would drink that, and that in many ways had a lot of B vitamins, but it supported his microbiome before he went to work. Other people did yogurts. Other people did sauerkrauts, kombucha. Pretty much every culture had a way of, or some aspect of supporting that, or fermented drinks. So this is what kombucha really is. Health rights, a new buzz for conservatives. Intelligent candidate, what state are you running? And I'm running in Massachusetts. Get the word out. A Shiva for Senate victory is really not about Massachusetts. It's about the country. It's time that you guys had someone like you, or someone like a real American. So when you really look at me, I, in many ways, reflect the founders of this country. A real American who's running for office, not these un-American politicians who are do-nothing deadbeats who, frankly, I don't even know why they're even in office and how these guys even got there. But with my candidacy, we have something very special, I believe, for this country, and reflects what this country gave me. CO2 is a fake fear. Senate needs you, definitely. Our sun is going through a solar So there are the climate is always changing. Okay, it's always changing. The issue is no one doubts the climate changes. No one doubts CO2 is a greenhouse gas. No one doubts greenhouse gases increase temperature. The issue is how much, and that question is what the fundamental question is. Look, it's known that the temperature is going to go up 1 degree because we're at the end of an ice age. However, raising fear, using that fear to drive policy so certain people can make money without ever addressing the fundamental issues of infrastructure, if you read the manifesto, is what this is all about, using biomedia warfare. Medusa 2, thank you. I hope he wins. Look, again, I'm telling you that I ran last time against a fake Indian Elizabeth Warren, who's a complete fake. This year, I'm running as a Republican. By the way, both parties last year kept me off the debate stage. Hopefully they won't do that this time. But the important issue is you have someone real running, a scientist, an inventor, an educator, someone who actually works for a living. China violating the atmosphere and running a concentration camp. You will win, Shiva. Thank you. Please discuss NCOV from a modern immune system perspective. Enjoyed your immune system talk. So anyway, if you guys go down in my Twitter, there's a talk I did called A Modern Theory of the Immune System. And that talk really lays out, from my research, which I presented at the National Science Foundation Center about a month ago, what is the modern immune system and how that view of the immune system, which is modern science, is so different than the very primitive model of the immune system that was used to create vaccines, which is what we still use. That's about 50 to 150 years old. So the key takeaway, if you go read the video, see the video, you should do. By the way, today I'll be doing another video with my partner, Alan Erickson. Alan is my partner in shooting the videos. He's not my partner in other ways, but Alan is going to help me do a video. He's very good at the camera angles. Another video that we're going to do about the healthcare system at around 4 p.m. today, where I do my drawings. A lot of people don't even understand how the healthcare system works. Today you're going to learn how the healthcare system works, like you learned how the Paris Accords works or the immune system works. Bill Gates is a hero of the Netflix pandemic movie. Nothing strange, folks. Yeah, it's quite... Bill Gates is out there. He said, he wished he had gotten a PR agent when he was younger. Bill Gates did not create DOS. He bought it from another guy. His mama and papa helped him, market it out there. He's an example of someone who represents the aristocracy. He didn't come bottoms up like I did, or Philo Farnsworth did, or Charles Lindbergh did, real inventors, or like the founders of this country. This guy's an aristocrat. And he's a top-down guy, thinks he knows it all. Now he's got a lot of publicity promoting him as the smartest guy in the world, and he's not that smart. God bless you, Dr. Shiva. Any ideas on how to solve remyelination to treat MS, other neurological issues affecting millions? Great question. I wrote a paper in Nature Neuroscience. Let me see if I can go find it for you guys. It's on PubMed. If we go to PubMed here, I'm going to go to PubMed here and I'll try to find it for you guys. Let me transition here. If we go to PubMed, you guys can find it also. It's a paper I'm proud of because this was using the technology that I developed to really look at all sorts of neurovascular diseases as a, you see parasites, PIR. Parasites are a structure around the brain. So this is a paper, it's free, it's up on, you can get it here. If you read this paper here, it's quite a good paper. It's called Parasites of the Neurovascular Unit, Key Functions and Signaling Pathways. So what is the parasites? Let me see if I can, so if you look at this diagram here, let me explain what the parasites are. So if you think about your brain, let me explain it this way. You have your brain, which I'm going to do a simple model, but if here's your brain, surrounding your brain is what's called the neurovascular unit. So you have your brain, which I'm going to represent here by the astrocytes and the neurons, all your astrocytes and your neurons. But surrounding your brain is what's called arteries, blood flow. Okay, that's called the blood-brain barrier. Blood-brain barrier. So your brain is where all your quote-unquote thinking and all your chemical reactions are taking place, so which is the astrocytes and the neurons. But around it is made up of these arteries, okay? And the arterial structure is made up of two particular structures. One is this structure right here, if I can zoom in a little bit, called the endothelial, this tan structure. Okay, put it right here. And around it is a valve structure called the parasites. Think about blood flows through this gray thing. This is where blood is flowing. And when the parasites are working fine, blood goes from in here into your astrocytes, okay? Which is your brain. And then toxins get taken out of your brain through here, okay? So, by the way, this was a paper that I was the second senior author, actually a co-PI with Berislav Zelkovic, one of the leading guys in the world in neurovascular, and his postdoc, Melanie. But what we did, Melanie Sweeney. So here, we're looking at the blood-brain barrier. And by the way, just to give you an idea, if you looked at all the blood-brain barrier, and if you stretched out those arteries, it would go from San Francisco to Los Angeles. We have a lot of this blood-brain barrier. And the thesis that Dr. Zelkovic had was that when destruction occurs to the parasites, that many of these neurovascular diseases, Alzheimer's, all the MS, etc. So you can see here at the lateral view, you're looking at blood flowing through your blood-brain barrier. There's the red blood cells. And when destruction takes place to the blood-brain barrier, you get all different kinds of diseases. So what we did was, using an approach that I shared with you, let me go back to this, and the folks at USC, we looked at all the molecular reactions at the cellular level here. That's what you're seeing here. You're looking at all the molecular reactions at the blood-brain barrier here, okay? And then what you're seeing here, over here, is all the reactions in the endothelium, which is that one structure inside of the brain, the neurovascular unit. Here you're seeing all the, let me go back over here, sorry. Here you're seeing all the chemical reactions over here in the parasites, which is a pink structure. And by the way, behind all of these are hundreds of papers that we've mapped out. And then also over here in the astrocytes. Let's go over here. Again, if I had slides, I'll walk you through this, but since someone brought this up, and this is the astrocytes. Now, one of the interesting things, one of the major contributions that I made from a system side was really to propose this architecture. So to answer the question, if you look, here's a blood-brain barrier, here's the endothelial, here's the parasites, here's the astrocytes, and you can see all the different molecular pathways here, which we've mapped out from all the research out there. And what we're proposing is all these diseases, Alzheimer's, ALS, cancer, different diseases here are not separate diseases, but they're actually, so for example, if you follow Alzheimer's and ALS, they're actually dysfunctions in this particular mechanism, which is something that spans the endothelial and the parasites. The simple takeaway is, in Western medicine, unfortunately, we look at everything as an individual disease. But if you take a systems approach, you find out that many of these diseases are common diseases which lead to some type of neuroinflammation, and that neuroinflammation is related to a dysfunction that takes place across the subsystems of the immune system. So, and particularly because we know the gut-brain axis. So one of the important things is, how do you support the immune system? One of our colleagues that we're working with, and others have shared with us, one of the ways is you want to support your thyroid and your gut. When the thyroid's working well, and you can go, it's a systems approach, your body will take proper carotenoids and it'll convert it to vitamin A. Vitamin A is extremely important for protecting the cell walls. When your gut is working right, proper hydrochloric acid, proper gut bacteria, your body then will produce and maintain the levels of homeostasis. You need to modulate all these reactions. So if you want to really support your health, really start studying about iodine and T3, T4. Start looking really at how you support your thyroid and your gut. I mean, there's many other subsystems, but these are two very important subsystems. Okay, would you get on a cruise ship today? Cures make no money. Man, this map will bankrupt the medical establishment. I think it's essential for the campaign that Trump endorses you. Look, everyone should be behind our campaign. The opposition, which is whether it's Ed Mark or this young lad, also the old Ted or Joe Kennedy, they're going to raise around $40 million. Our goal is to win this campaign with $2 million. So we need about 100,000 people donating us $25, which is about $2.5 million, and we'll win. Because we have a huge groundswell, not only here, but across the country, because people are tired of these political, corrupt, career politician idiots. And they really want someone like you. They want someone like me who actually understands how to win and what a real American is. So everyone out there, go to our website, give us $25 if you can, give us $5, give us $1, volunteer for the campaign, whatever you want to do. But the campaign in Massachusetts, our campaign, your campaign for Shiva for Senate is going to be historic. Everyone thought when Trump won that was historic. I would argue that our winning in Massachusetts is going to be explosive because they don't want everyday people. They don't want people like the founders in the Senate. And it'll give an extraordinary opportunity for you guys to have a real voice. Anyway, it's 12:48. Let's see what other stuff we have here coming through on, let's see what we got coming here on Facebook here. Lots of comments coming on Facebook. Michelle Pearl, blood-brain barrier being underdeveloped in infant is one of the important reasons why we should all know better than to inject toxins into the body. So Michelle's making a good point. The blood-brain barrier, think about it. It's a barrier, BBB. It's what protects our brain from all the things that come in. Now, the blood-brain barrier, when it evolved, was designed to handle certain types of things coming in the natural environment. Was it designed to handle aluminum, which is in vaccine? Was it designed to handle plutonium? Was it designed to handle titanium? These are things that our brain, our body has not evolved to handle. So, understanding biology, understanding systems biology, which is I've done most of my life, is a way to really for us to start making decisions and demand. Again, science is important, but this is really about freedom. This is why homeopathy is so important. Treats a person, not symptoms. We seem to overthink what we need: clean water, real food, exercise, and fearing nothing but going against your own morals. So again, Michelle Pearl said that. Very, very powerful statement. When we feed the body the right things, traditional systems of medicine knew what those were: clean air, clean water, clean food. When we use science to understand what's appropriate for us, and medicine is fundamentally an art and an information science. This evening, I'll talk more about healthcare. We have a bill coming out called the Health Rights Act, which I'll talk about next week. Let's see what else we got here. What source of iodine do you recommend? Look, iodine is, if you study the history of iodine in this country, iodine, our diet used to have, some people argue, about 100,000 times more than iodine than we get today. There was a salt scare that came out for cardiovascular disease. Everyone said stop salt. Morton's used to add iodine in the salt, so when people start consuming salt, they in fact got less iodine. One of the best ways of iodine is through food. So for example, dulse, seaweeds, D-U-L-S-E. Seaweeds have quite a bit of iodine. If you want supplementation, you should go and explore things like many of the glandulars, that come from organic sources. In the old days, people used to, if they ate meat, they would eat, the organ meats. The organ meats, some of them have a very good source of, T3 and T4. But fundamentally, if your body has the right levels of iodine, it will produce, and the thyroid's functioning right, it will produce what you need. But you can also supplement it with some of these glandulars, which come from organic sources. Can you donate from overseas? No, you can't donate from overseas. You can't donate, but you're welcome. You can still go to Your Body, Your System. You can get my books and other things that you want anyway. Gut health. Do you filter the water you drink? If so, how? So, great question. Filtering water, right? Water. I live in supposedly a nice neighborhood here in Massachusetts called Belmont. But when I read my water bill, it says, be aware there could be lead. It's quite extraordinary. Again, instead of focusing on clean air, clean water, clean food, we scare people that everyone's got to go get vaccines. We tell people they got to, CO2 is a pollutant. These political nut job career politicians basically do not address fundamental issues. But, charcoal is a wonderful way. It's a natural way to, I was just at a very nice place where they literally have the charcoal bars you can put in to your water. Charcoal is a very good way. to support it. There's much more sophisticated systems like reverse osmosis. There's a number of systems like that which actually use a semi-permeable membrane, which blocks pretty much everything coming through. But one of the things we do need is we need a proper set of minerals in our body. Next question. We answered that. Let's go over here. Some types of sushi have iodine. I have a zero water filter. I distill my water. InfoWars, someone says, is the best iodine. Virus designed for Chinese DNA. Yeah, someone just said that. Someone said, was this virus designed for only going and attacking Chinese people and knocking them out? We don't know. But I can tell you this, that 2% mortality rate, okay? China's taken, Hong Kong off the front pages. Just talking about this for my thyroid health, seaweed is a great source. Yes, seaweed is an amazing source, of iodine. Liver is good for you. Yeah, and in the old folklore, once a week or once every 2 weeks, people would have, liver, properly cooked. My grandmother would make it at least once a week. Cancer hates oxygen. That's true. Let's see. Alex Jones is right again. Iodine is a magic supplement. Get Survival Shield X2. There's an ad for Alex. I want to run in Rhode Island. Can we talk tomorrow? Sure. Call me up. What if you don't have thyroid or your replacement medicine? Look, I am not, according to the FDA, I'm not a medical specialist. You should ask your doctor. But I do understand systems. Your thyroid is one of the essential systems in your body, and people should go study it. There's great places you can study how the thyroid works. Donated. How do we find somebody in other states? Thank you. Go Shiva. Can we meet tomorrow? Someone. Yep. Rooting for you. God bless you. What about 35% food grade H2O2 target to flood the system? Look, hydrogen peroxide. When you can deliver oxygen to your body, anaerobic bacteria, anaerobic means without oxygen, cannot survive. There are some very good natural toothpaste, for example, that put H2O2 in it. One of the things I want people to explore is periodontal disease. When you look at your mouth bacteria, there's a microbiome in here, and our mouth is very closely related to our brain. So meaning there's a whole body of work that's showing that if you have spirochetes, certain types of bacteria in your brain, you're going to affect heart health plus brain health. So in traditional cultures, people would do a set of practices to keep their mouth in good shape. For example, I'll give you an example. In the village in India, before you ate a meal, you would wash out your mouth. Then you would eat, okay? You'd have a certain set of foods you eat. By the way, you hit all the different flavors. And at the end of it, you always had yogurt at the end. Okay, it's an interesting thing. Then you washed out your mouth again. But the point is that the notion of keeping the mouth clean, but with the right bacteria. Our work with Cytosolve is about, we just finished up a very interesting study looking at the 700 different bacteria in the mouth to really understand periodontal disease, which we'll be publishing in probably several months from now. But keep an eye out for that. But again, mouth health is very, very important. Okie dokie. Marie Riley says, that's awesome. Shiva's amazing. I've been with him since 2017, 2018. So everyone down in the South Shore, we have, by the way, we need volunteers all over the state. Let me just, in closing, let me tell you, we have to get 40,000 signatures to get on the ballot. So if you guys are outside of Massachusetts, go and volunteer on our website, donate, of course, but volunteer. You can help us make calls. But those of you in Massachusetts, if you have family in Massachusetts, let them know to come and volunteer for our campaign. We have squad leaders here. We need to get 40,000 signatures very quickly to get on the ballot. And then it's winning the race, which all of you can help do. Tweet this out. Let other people know that there's, a real American running for office, he was a hardworking guy, just like you, that represents truly America and wants to really work for you and really of service. So get the word out there. Let's finish up with a few others, and I'll end up with Facebook. My goat's gut is most important also. I'm not sure what that means. What about getting shingle shot? Really wants to do that. What's up? I had pneumonia from a bad tooth. Yeah, so mouth health, which we forget, is extremely important. When dentists start doing root canals and going deep into your mouth, you should really think about your immune health before you get some of these dental procedures done, because the immune health, mouth health, can affect your entire body. So be very careful when you have dentistry done. Dentistry is something that's important, but you should really understand how to do the dentistry well. I mean, how to support the dentistry process. Okay, let's see what else is left here. The mouth has its own microbiome. Yep. What protocol would you recommend when being exposed to high levels of copper and lead in water? Toxic air. We work next to garbage burning plant. Wow. High levels of carcinogens in water, soil, air. Worried about immediate detox. I use Morton salt for my water softener. Is that safe? Okay. So look, heavy metals. Now here's the thing with metals, okay? At microdose levels, some of these metals are very valuable. Believe it or not, in traditional systems of medicine, people would use very small doses of even arsenic. And in fact, that's what it is in many of the pills that people use if a dog gets heartworm. So it's all about dosaging. So obviously, if you're around a lot of these environments where you're getting a lot of toxic air, you may want to look at things, and you should talk to health. There's a lot of good healthcare professionals, naturopaths, and in fact, integrative MDs who have ways to really support your liver. The liver and the skin, listen very carefully, are where toxins are processed. So if your liver ain't working right, your skin is going to be the secondary method, secondary system to handle expulsion of toxins. So one of the good areas to look at is the liver. The liver is really like the carburetor of your body. That's all the blood is processed through there. All the detox occurs through there. Obviously, kidneys are very important. And then the skin. So, there are many things you can do to support this. Some of them can be physical activity where you're moving your lymph, massage, brushing. That supports the skin always. And there's some very, very good, powerful herbs out there that you may want to look for supporting the liver. Dandelion greens are amazing vegetable. Milk thistle. People should explore these. There's been a lot of good scientific work done on both of these. Anyway, in closing, I want to say thank you very much. This evening, I'll be doing a talk on the healthcare system. You've seen my chalkboard talks. Again, these are educational. Again, just to let everyone know, I do work full-time. I have a full-time job. I'm not a professional nonprofit running stuff on, we had I know many of you know when it came to the vaccine issue, I've been out there educating you on immune health, but I also took a very bold stand, also exposing the people who've been involved in this movement. And if you go look at a lot of the Facebook comments, some people got upset at that because I went after certain sacred cows. But the bottom line is we live in a free country. We should have open discourse. And I'm as transparent as as I hope everyone will be. And I'll be as transparent to share with you everything I'm doing. That's why we built the new VA Shiva site. So go look at it so you have an understanding of what I'm doing. If you want me to share other content, please let me know. But please support your campaign. It's your campaign, Shiva for Senate. This is a national, we're running in Massachusetts for U.S. Senate, but it's a national campaign. And I'll continue to bring to you more innovative ideas, so we can build the future and move forward. That's what I hope to